welcome to a new Future Leaders webinar. We are really glad to have a new fellowship leader, and this fellowship leader is Alina Coca. She is a deputy at the NATO press office in Brussels, a Romanian diplomat with over 15 years of experience at NATO only, and she has an academic background and also completed security studies, communication, and psychology and sociology. Alina, welcome and thank you for accepting our invitation.
Thank you for having me. Really thrilled to be here with you and with the young leaders that I can't wait to hear from. So yeah.
Thank you very much.
Just a quick question. So we have this interaction, and I'm really grateful for you all agreeing for all of us to discuss, because I just want to make sure that I have the chance to share with you what is relevant for you and what do you find helpful for you. You know a lot about many things. I looked you up as well. So you have a very, very good cohort gathered there, and you young people with your smart minds, we can also learn from you. So don't hesitate to also share what you feel like you want to share. Okay, just another ground rule that I wanted to come from me, and yeah.
Thank you. Indeed, we have a really great cohort of future leaders in this fellowship this year, and we are really happy to provide for them all the knowledge that we can. For this webinar, we have a premiere, meaning that all the questions are gathered from our fellows. So they really worked to find the best questions, and in my opinion, they actually did. And we have organized the questions in 5 topics, and I will present each topic, and I will invite each fellow to ask the question. So we start with the first topic, which is connecting NATO and the way it communicates with member states and other international organizations or other states. And the first question goes to Laura, please.
Hi, good morning or good evening there. Thank you for accepting our invite. And I think I'll start pretty heavy. So my first question to you, is how much leverage, how much influence does each state individually have over the communication strategy as a whole? So obviously I'm referring, these days to the US, who individually maintains a position that NATO should be abandoned, it's a burden, we might not be there, versus what the internal politics are. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Laura. Indeed, you went heavy. So as a matter of principle, NATO as an organization has pretty standard rules of engagement. First of all, the first rule is we are accountable to our public, and we are open to our public. We have a communication department which includes different branches. That branches engage with different types of audiences, and all these branches communicate together in a way that ensures, first of all, we inform. This is our duty, to inform. Then we stay proactive, so we are also open for questions, and we engage. So we inform, we engage, and then last but not least, we try to educate, because security is not easy to grasp, right? At the same time, it's very important that that is well understood. And coming to your question, we work together as an alliance to inform our publics, and every state also has a duty to inform their publics. And how they do that, they decide, yeah. But at the NATO level, we make sure that whenever we inform audiences, those pieces of information are allow the audiences basically to get access to factual information. So we don't really go into opinions or interpretation and so on. Getting now more into the topic that we see grasp a lot of commentary out there. The US and the burden sharing. This is not a new topic, yeah. So burden sharing, in the sense of all allies pulling together their efforts and resources to defend all allies, has been there for a long time, and it's something that, of course, we recognize, and there is no secret that this contribution is different, coming from different countries, but it's also a very complicated formula. I don't want to get into too much technicalities, but I don't want to elaborate on what is the public message that comes from a particular ally. What I want to say is that in the public communication, what we hear also from every ally is that they are committed. They are committed to NATO, and there is no question about any ally changing this stance. And I don't know if you followed, by the last week, we had a meeting of the foreign ministers of NATO, and the foreign minister, or the state secretary, the American state secretary, said that very clearly. So US is committed to NATO. But indeed, there is a lot of emphasis put on the need for European allies to step in more. And this is something that, again, it's not new. And European allies have been stepping up. And now with the Ukraine war at the border, this happens even more. Yeah, so that's what I wanted to, sorry. I came from the office. I didn't really have the chance to drink some water, so let me do that. Yeah, so, that's what I think it's important to clarify. There is no leverage that one allies take on others. The burden sharing is an important topic, and it has been there, and it's happening. And US is committed to NATO, and you see that from the public posturing that we also see. So I hope it answers your question, but we can, of course, go more in detail if you wish so.
Paul, if I may, just a quick follow-up, including Arna's question. Thank you. No, appreciate it, and appreciate your willingness to discuss it. I understand the theoretical perspective that no state is above the others, right, in terms of the communication. Can you talk just a little bit more about the actual logistics? Like we know in terms of decision making, like there's a consensus forming and all of that. Can you talk about how actually, like, is there a meeting of like press officers from like the different member states where they come with their preferred message and then it gets negotiated, or how does it actually work in practice? Thank you.
Oh, yeah, thank you. Gladly. This is what I do every day. Yeah. No, NATO has its own communication department. And in this communication department, we have a NATO press office that I'm part of. And in the NATO press office, we have a spokesperson who is the spokesperson of the Secretary General and of the Alliance. When media have a question, they come to us. And we do not go to nations. Yeah. But of course, we know as press officers, and the press service has a duty also to understand the discussions in the organization and to stay informed. So we work with experts in the organization that can help on particular aspects that can be more or less technical. At the same time, we also have we follow the decision-making process in the organization, and we in the press service together with the leadership, actually the leadership of the organization, supported by the press office, also decides how to go public or when to go public about something. And this is a process. This is something that is very, very straightforward. So first of all, as I started with, we have a duty to inform. So whatever happens at NATO, we inform about it. The decision-making process in NATO is complex, but it's again straightforward because no decision is made without consensus. That consensus is built via a lot of discussions. In NATO, we have dozens of groups of people that get literally around the table. And these groups, we call them committees. We have committees on operations. We have a committee on public diplomacy. We have a committee on partnerships, working with partner nations. We have a committee on resilience. So every topic that has a work strand associated to it is, in a way, managed by a group of people that look into the details of that, because it's important that they get it right. And also they speak the same language. And then this process builds the consensus, prepares a decision. And this decision is not made by the committee itself, but it's brought up. The next level is the level of the ambassadors. At NATO headquarters, we have ambassadors from every NATO country. It's the only building in the world that hosts not only the international staff that I'm part of, so the administration of the organization, but also national delegations, national embassies of all NATO countries. And those embassies include two components. One is civilian, diplomatic, which is staffed by diplomats and also by civilians from defense ministries and other ministries that have a role to play. And the other one is military, which is staffed by military staff. That's why when you might have heard about NATO being a politically military alliance. It's not a military bloc, it's an alliance that is politically led, because the decision is made politically and then it's implemented by the military part. So I was talking about the decision-making process. The committees, they prepare something, a decision, they move it up to the ambassadors. If it's a decision that can be taken by the ambassadors, and there are different rules and levels. They can express their agreement, but they never do that without consulting with their capital. So every decision is made by allies. Then several times per year we have we bring that. Actually, we don't bring them; they come. Different. We have 6 times per year the ministers of defense meet, or the foreign ministers meet, and they are here to agree on further reaching decisions. Those decisions, once they're made, we communicate them. So there is nothing that doesn't get communicated. Of course, not all the details, not all the classified details get communicated, but what NATO does and why NATO does it is communicated, which means that what we communicate, in a way, we don't get together as press officers with other nations, but actually we communicate something that would have been agreed by all the countries at the working levels, at the ambassadorial level, or at the defense ministers level, at the foreign ministers level, or at the heads of state and government level. So this is how the communication reflects actually the decision that is made by all allies. Sorry for the background noise. I'm in the living, but the kitchen is just next to me.
Okay, thank you.
I hope it makes sense. And yeah, sorry for taking a bit of more space, but thank you for asking the question, Laura, because I think it's an important piece that I wanted also to convey. So thank you.
I think, Laura, you're muted.
Oh, no, thank you. Appreciate it. That made it super clear and it makes a lot of sense. So appreciate it. Thank you.
Good. Thank you.
So let's move on with the questions. Julia, if you can wrap up.
Yes, sure. Thank you very much, first of all, Alina, for you being here with us today. And regarding this topic, I think my question is closely related to the previous ones. But I was thinking more into the split between the scope of the alliance is to keep the security for the allies, but at the same time, there might be some tensions that could arise between the allies. So this, the tariffs dispute between the US and the EU is just an example that it's happening now, but I don't know, hypothetical scenario would be between other allies, for example. So how does NATO manages this this tension?
Okay, so first clarification: the tariffs and the EU member states are not part of the conversation in NATO. It doesn't. NATO is not the EU. Yeah, I'm sure you know. But it's also true that most states, most NATO member states, are also EU member states, and we work together as organizations to make sure that we stay coherent on the security side. And I'm sure you might have heard about EU efforts to related to defense, yeah, to defense investment, because of all these conversations also in the public space, they also got more visibility. But this is, again, not something new. It got more visibility recently, and also it got more speed for obvious reasons, but it's not something new. The idea is that all member states, NATO and EU, yeah, or every state that is also a member of EU and NATO, has a priority to spend their resources wisely and use basically NATO's NATO's avenues and EU avenues in a way to complement each other. If you want, NATO does not have, as such, military capabilities. So NATO does not have soldiers, tanks, nuclear capabilities. No, I don't know if it surprises you, but the truth is that NATO does not have that as an organization, as a supranational organization. But what it has mechanisms to bring all the resources together and to have them under a centralized command in case of need, to make them work together as one. So all the soldiers that you might have heard about being deployed in eastern part of Europe, like in the Baltic countries, in Romania, in Poland, in Bulgaria, they are known as NATO troops, but actually they are soldiers and forces that are deployed by NATO countries under a NATO umbrella, under a NATO command. Going back to your question, tariffs is indeed, as we can see, a topic that has lots of attention, but it's not a NATO topic. And the relationship between EU and US, it's a different relationship. It's a different. It doesn't go through NATO, if you want. Yeah. And we leave it to be an economical discussion, and we don't. There is no interference. I hope it's clear. If there is something that I'm missing, or forgive me, but don't hesitate to flag it.
No, it's very good. Thank
Do you need more clarifications?
I was thinking that, of course, it's an economical discussion, but at the same time, security and defense investments is related to economic situation. So these two are interlinked on a level. But no, thank you very much for your answers.
They can be. I mean, obviously, there is impact. There could be impact, and indeed, there are connections. But these connections. We live in an interconnected world, right? There is nothing that you can decide in security or in economy that does not have an impact, even little, on security or vice versa. There are decisions to be made, indeed, and now the decision that allies are making is to increase their defense spending. That defense spending, of course, is not spending the objective is not to spend money. The objective is to invest in defense. because the situation that we are in. And that is an obligation by every country to do, so that they build themselves resilient and capabilities, first of all, to face the situation that we are in. So again, a war at the border, but also, for instance, cyber defense. Cyber threats do not know borders, or anything that has to do with infrastructure or with that has an impact on defense. So the key word here, the key word here is basically building or making sure that we stay resilient as an alliance, but also as a group of countries that pool resources together.
Right.
So I hope it makes sense.
Yeah. Thank you very much for the insights.
Thank you, Julia. So we move on to the next topic, which is much more connected with the role of NATO Press, NATO Press Office to communicate and its, let's just say, modalities, processes in strategic communication and ensuring resilience. And I invite Robert to ask his question. Robert.
Yes, sorry, just a second, please, to let me open the document, because I had some questions and I need to check which one of
A lot of questions.
Yeah, I need to check which one should I start with. Just
It's
a second.
good to be curious, so don't hesitate, okay?
First of all, thank you for joining us, and sorry for the webcam, but I just got out of classes. So my question for you would be, how do NATO communicators decide what is in the public interest and what is not? Because there's a somewhat thin line based on that need to know principle.
Yeah, good. Yes, that makes sense. I can look at your picture from the website, so good to see you as well. I said earlier, we have a duty to inform. So we do. NATO does its job, which job is important for the public, and the public. We want our publics, our nations, to know about what NATO does and why. So we start with that. There is no major decision that stays behind the closed doors. So everything NATO decides, especially those decisions that have far-reaching impact and consequences in terms of new resources that need to be brought together, objectives that we have, they are communicated. The need to know principle, we don't look at it like that. And I appreciate that, of course, NATO, seen from outside, of course, it's an organization where security is important, where the rules are strict when it comes to classified information. And this is where the rule need to know applies. So we do not comment, for instance, on intelligence. So what is classified stays classified, but it stays classified, especially when it's sensitive and when decisions are not yet made. So that's something that we as press professionals are also very, mindful about. At the same time, when a decision is made, it's made. And we, as I said, we have a duty to communicate that. I'll go back to this need to know and the classification. I know that you also discussed with my former boss, Oana Lungescu, with whom I worked for 13 years. So I was in NATO already when she joined, and I'm still here. She's now retired, but she's also someone that I admire, and we worked very well together. And she's also an important voice in communicating about security because she's very knowledgeable. But leaving that aside, I don't know if you discussed with her a bit about the Ukraine war. She might have told you already. If not, I'm telling you now. So before the war started, when it was obvious that Russia was preparing something, but continuing to deny, there was a deliberate decision to declassify information and to communicate publicly intelligence that was gathered by different allies about what they could see on the ground. And that was a deliberate decision to, first of all, communicate to the, to the Russians, we see you, but also to inform the public and to give them that insight there could be something happening. And by making that public, the intention was to, if you want, to vaccinate the public with the truth virus, something coming from intelligence, declassified deliberately, to shed light about a reality on the ground, on which there were a lot of, confusion, speculation, denial, and so on and so forth. So I don't know if Juana mentioned that to you. I don't know if you read something about this, but that was quite a step that was taken inside the alliance to inform, even based on intelligence matters that in normal circumstances would stay out of the public domain. But sometimes circumstances need new approaches.
Circumstances change.
If I may, I have one follow-up,
Yeah, sure.
just short.
Yes.
Is there like a time frame, I don't know, it's a procedure or something? If I don't know, like 10 years or something pass, you can declassify information about something, or it can stay forever classified.
To be honest, I don't really know. There is a rule that is applied by people who take care of these matters. I don't know. So I think it's also a decision in a way. It can be also a decision made on a case by case basis, but I'm sure there are also rules that apply to the bulk of the organization of the intelligence matters. So yeah, I'm sorry, I cannot answer this question because I simply don't know.
Thank you.
Thank you, Robert.
You're welcome.
We'll give you time to prepare your webcam and continue with Andrei, who has also a great question. Andrei, please.
Thank you so much. Good evening. Thank you for tuning into this lovely discussion. My question is, how do you think strategic communication is sort of evolving to help shape public perception? This ties into the duty to inform, as you've mentioned before. How does it help to build resilience given the current issues with disinformation and hybrid threats we've been seeing lately?
Yeah, thank you. Well, in my view, it's crucial, and I'm talking, wearing different hats. I'm now on the public information front, let's say, but before I was part of a national administration, and as part of my career, I was not in the public spotlight or but I was also witnessing the preparation of my country to join European Union and NATO. There were different times, but what I want to say is that throughout my experience, I understood that it's not about strategic communications, but it's about communicating strategically and being strategic about that, looking at the circumstances, our duty, our objectives. What is our objective? Our objective is to stay resilient. So again, I think you touched all the right aspects. So being strategic in communication is crucial, and it's not for shaping the understanding, but it's for facilitating the understanding. We hear a lot about shaping, about influencing, about being mindful about all this. From my perspective, we just need to be strategic to continue, despite all odds, to help our publics be resilient and be informed. And I think you'll have, I'm sure you'll want to get more in detail, but I'll just mention something. we at NATO, in the public communication department, we have different branches that I mentioned before. So we have a department that works with press. Why do we do that? What do you think? That we work with press?
Make sure they get the right understanding of what you wanted to say and not twist your words up.
But do you know what press does?
They report on the events that happen, right?
Yeah.
And they
So
must do that as truthfully as possible and as in tune with what you declared at NATO.
Yes. And who do they reach to? Who do they touch? Press.
The public.
Exactly. So the press is our direct link, in a way, to a big chunk of the public. So we reach through the mainstream press, we call it like this, a big part of our publics. Of course, our publics, some of them watch more TV, some others watch, read newspapers, some others read online, some others listen to the radio more and more. But in NATO, I mean, it's not only in NATO, but in the press department, we work with all the traditional media, let's say. The same way, we have a well-established relationship that I can go more in detail about, in order for them to have access to direct access to information about NATO from us directly, and to also have the possibility to discuss and to ask questions. This is our raison d'être. This is our mission. While their mission is to, of course, inform the public opinion based on the information that they receive. Then another department works with the civil society. We do that because of two reasons. The civil society is also a very important part of the public. At the same time, they also have their own audiences. Some of them are more specialized. Some of them look at particular aspects about security, but not only. They work with academia, they work with universities, they work with think tanks. So these are what we call publics that are, let's say, converted, but at the same time, they are also intermediate, or they are also opinion formers, or if you want, press comes with the information, and the think tanker, someone who has a lot of knowledge, the analyst, they go onto TV to explain why something is important, to also give the context. So they work together like this. One gives the facts, the other one comes with the interpretation, the explanation, the more in detail overview. And again, it's about how they work together so that the ultimate public, they understand not only what, but also why, and sometimes also how. Another part of our division works also with all the platforms on which the information is pushed out. We have a team that films everything. Every NATO event that has a public component, we have a NATO TV crew, so a cameraman, a photographer, a videographer. Why do we do that? Because we want to also provide this content, visual content, for media to use it, and for whoever needs a visual content to use it. Because we are conscious that not everyone can send their photographer or videographer, but those pictures, they want them to have them. So that's also another a way of being strategic.
Really interesting, actually. A lot of details, new details, even for me. Thank you.
Okay.
We go to the next question, and I think that Robert is now ready to show us his face. Right, Robert?
Okay.
Yeah, just arrived home, so happy to see you.
Happy to see you.
Another question that I had is about the anonymous leaks that may occur from time to time. How does the press office minimize the impact of these leaks? Because I think it can have an impact on the activities and on the strategies that NATO has.
And when you refer to leaks, do you have anything in particular in mind? I mean, do you remember having read something, or just to be
I
more
don't
concrete?
remember a concrete example like from NATO, but I read a lot of things right from the Romanian national decision-making process. Like someone from the inside leaks information to the press that a specific decision is about to be made.
Uh-huh. Okay. Okay. So yeah, it's something that can happen. Our policy is we do not comment on leaked, classified information, whatever is not public, meant to be public by then stays classified, right? Again. And then it's also the responsibility of every nation to deal with that in a manner that complies with our ethics. And but I don't want to elaborate more on that. But what I want also to say is sometimes you might read reports that talk about an official from NATO or a NATO diplomat that says something, or a diplomat from a country and that's actually, it might be surprising, but that's actually deliberate for different reasons. For instance, one of the tools that we use here at NATO headquarters, and many countries do the same, we organize background briefings, because we all know that, we can communicate public and we can say something, up to a limited extent. We cannot elaborate too much. But at the same time, it's important that there is a there is a deeper understanding. We facilitate a deeper understanding of something, So again, I'm going to go back to the intelligence. It might be surprising for you. It might sound surprising for you to hear that actually we do have briefings, that we do share intelligence in a way, or we organize background briefings that talk about intelligence matters. We have it's a deliberate decision to do so. For instance, before a defense ministerial or a meeting of defense ministers, we organize background briefings on different topics where media that are at NATO headquarters can be in the same room with experts that know a lot about those topics, but it's not their job description to be spokespeople. They know a lot. They can discuss, and there is a more genuine conversation like us here. Yeah, you're not media. I'm not a spokesperson. I'm expecting that none of you will publish tomorrow what I will say, and I can be more detailed about stuff because I want you to understand better, and I want you to have that information, background information that helps you, not to be more clear about something. So these background briefings can be even on the situation in Ukraine, for instance, or on support for Ukraine, or support from countries in the Balkan region. So those are not to be considered leaks, but it's providing background information to media to have something more for them to be able to explain better to the public opinion. And that information, one of the ground rules is, we provide you this possibility to discuss with our experts. You do not attribute this information to our experts because they are not spokespeople. Their job description is not that, but their job description is is their expertise in that field. They explain to you that, based on their expertise, you use that expertise and that background information so that you can explain in your material, but you don't attribute to that person. You attribute to a NATO official or a NATO diplomat So when you see that, it's a sign that actually there was a lot of effort behind to provide a bit more information, to provide a bit more meat, so that it's better understood there is more content, and people, get a bit more of what otherwise could be something a bit more generic or a bit, more high level. What do you think about that?
I was wondering, did it ever happen, like a journalist to break this rule? And if it happened, how can this be like tackled? Is just a no comment, like with the classified information, or is there like anything else?
Well, it can happen indeed. And it happened to me when I was in Romania in the press service of the foreign ministry. We had a background briefing, we had the rule, and a journalist was under a lot of pressure from his editor, and yeah, the journalist broke actually the agreement. Now, sometimes it happens. It's not tragic, because it's not meant to be, it's not information that changes everything. On the contrary, it's information that provides more context, but it's a matter, in the end, the damage is at the trust level. So I had a conversation with that journalist after I got phone calls from other journalists that said, Alina, but we had this agreement that journalist broke the agreement. What should I do now? Because my boss is also looking at me and asking me to do the same. In the end, that was the damage. It was the trust between us and the journalist, also between the journalists themselves. So it's the trust takes a lot to build, and you can lose it in a flip second. That's a damage that in this world can matter, because next time that journalist will not be invited anymore. So it will have some consequences on his job, and also other journalists might be tempted or not to do the same. And again, in the end, an organization that sees this can decide at some point to do less of this. So there are some consequences that at some point can reach even further. That you see what I mean, yeah. So it can happen.
Thank you.
But we try to trust. We choose to trust. Let's say.
Okay, thank you. So we have further questions on this topic. Bianca, please.
No, thank you, Paul. Thank you, Alina. I would just wanted to follow up on this because I think it's interesting. And I just wanted to ask you, are they obliged, the journalists, somehow to provide also the context in which they receive this information, for example, in background briefing and so? Because I saw a lot of EU diplomat, NATO diplomat said this and this. And for me, always it seemed like informal exchanges with a different publication, not in this official context that I was not aware of that it exists. So I'm just wondering if they somehow are obliged, or if they usually present the context.
It depends. It can or not. It can be more informal or less informal. Or let's say, how should I put it? It can be part of a deliberate background briefing with more journalists, or it can be indeed an informal conversation with one journalist, but it's still on background. So what stays, it's the background character of it. And the journalist is not obliged to give the context. The context meaning, okay, in a background briefing. No, the journalist will look at the topic itself that they write about. So yeah, it can be a conversation with more. It can be a conversation one-on-one. What stays is the background character.
And just maybe because I was wondering, how can we as readers identify when it's an official background briefing context, or it's just an informal outside of this background briefing, which indeed is not allowed, but we know that there are unfortunately diplomats that are talking with the press, I would say informally, and even though they are not allowed. That's why I was trying to understand, how can we identify when it's an official context?
Yeah. For us, for instance, when we have background briefings, we have them, we advise media to attribute them to a NATO official. So when it's a NATO official, when it's an official, word there, it means that it's a deliberate communication on background. The European Union, to be honest, I don't have much visibility. But what I would advise you is actually to look at the content and also corroborate. If it's a content that you are focused on, the rule that is golden rule in the media, but also in communication, also when informing yourself, is check 3 sources. And that's gold is, but old is, that stays. And sometimes can be more informal than the deliberate character that I'm mentioning, but that also can help someone who is very, very interested in a topic to also keep stay more connected to the politics of it, because sometimes it's about politics, national politics. And I mean, in both in NATO and in European Union, the diplomats are also the diplomats of their country, so they pursue the country's interest, and it's only normal. At the same time, it doesn't. Both organizations, they work with a decision-making process that in NATO is consensus, in EU is unanimity. So it doesn't the pursuing national interest does not hinder, but sometimes can be a bit more visible, But so check the sources and take it as an add-on.
Okay, thank you. And we go to the next question, Ekaterina.
Thank you, Alina. I just love how holistic your responses are, and how you also tap in a bit into media literacy. I want to know, how does NATO involve or engage with youth and civil society in its strategic communication efforts?
Yeah, thank you. It's important to be holistic because everything is connected. And I'm also a bit passionate about this. So forgive me if I'm bringing you too many elements.
That's why we're here.
So the civil society is an very important interlocutor. And I mentioned just earlier that one of the branches in our communication department engages with the civil society. And they do that on a regular basis. And it's a two-street communication. So we have this section that has a number of people. All of them, they cover different countries, which means that I have, for instance, a colleague who is the go-to person for the relationship with think tanks from US. So that person knows, engages with them, socializes with them, or talks to them. They organize events together with NATO, but also facilitates actually a discussion. For instance, we had a NATO summit in US last year. You might be aware of this. At every summit for a while now, we have an associated event. Now we have a summit that is actually the gathering of the heads of state and the government. And we have a public diplomacy forum, a public diplomacy event, which we call the public forum. It's like this, we have a public forum where, together with different entities from the civil society, think tanks, we facilitate, or we create this event just to discuss what is the summit about. And in the United States last year, we had 4 big think tanks. One is the Atlantic Council, another one was the German Marshall Fund. They, together with our public diplomacy division, they organized this event, a 2-day event, during which they invited lots of experts, but also they invited heads of state, ministers of foreign affairs, or whoever, to discuss the topics of the summit. And those discussions were open for the public. There is a continuous live stream from that public forum. And it's meant exactly for that, to explain what is the summit about. What do those people that meet behind closed doors talk about? And why is that important? Was that decision made because of this? And you have voices there gathered by these people that present also different perspectives. So this is an example. Youth, very important. We all know that you guys, you don't watch TV a lot, or do you? Yeah.
At least in my case,
Yeah.
not really.
Do you read newspapers like first thing in the morning? I doubt.
My schedule doesn't allow it really, but
Exactly.
yeah.
So where do you get your information from?
I assume mostly social media.
Exactly. And we know that. So we also try to be there and to come towards you. So every platform that appears, we have a section in our public diplomacy division that also is active on all the social platforms and comes with content snippets about what NATO does that are meant for the social platforms. I don't know if you follow us. If not, maybe you could, if you're interested or not. Yeah, but in a more serious note, we know that there is a lot of content there. So it's a very competitive environment, and we are lucky when we can reach via these platforms. That's why more recently we also decided to work with what we call content creators. We are mindful that there are lots of other, let's say, new media or new more recent. There is a different dynamic in the social media world, right? And you know best, much better than me. So we know that there are lots of people that build their communities and feed their communities, and their communities trust them, and they also look towards them for information. So what we decided was to basically offer influencers the possibility to know more about NATO. So now for many events, we also invite influencers, and they don't get paid. It's invitation based. We offer them the possibility to discuss again with experts, but not only with experts. They also have access to the leadership, just to facilitate, their understanding and to help with that their communities understand. And why do you think this? Why do we believe that this is important? Because it is important, because we know that you are the future, and security is important not only for these, black suits people, old men in black suits or middle-aged women that work in NATO or in the public administration, but especially for you, because you're the future. Security is important. There is no prosperity, there is no stability without security. Many of you might know from your parents or from your grandparents that it was not always like this, especially in Romania or other countries in the Eastern Europe. And that's important. It's important to know and not to forget. So we do work with young people, youth. We want to stay connected. We want you to stay connected as well. So it's a two-way street as well.
Okay, so it's obvious that we encourage all the young out there to follow NATO and follow the Resilience Center official communication platforms. And I also invite Paul to add a follow-up question.
Yeah, I was a little bit curious about the nature. So I actually follow the YouTube channel for NATO on YouTube, and I'm a little bit curious about what the strategy is with the channel, because it doesn't seem like the videos that are made for it and the content that it puts out, the way that the YouTube channel is run, it doesn't seem like it's created to get a lot of natural, like it doesn't seem like it's created to receive natural views that are, it doesn't look like it's trying to be promoted by the algorithm. It doesn't follow the trends that successful YouTube channels might do. So I'm curious, what is it there for? Is it just a place so that when people do specifically search for it, have somewhere to find, or is that eventually a direction that NATO would like to go, that people find information about the channel? I'm just a little confused on what the goal of the YouTube channel is.
Yeah, it's very interesting to hear your question. I'm not involved in these decisions. I'm more related. I work more with media, but I hear you, And it's interesting what I'm hearing. My first hunch is, yeah, indeed. I know that all the events for which we produce content, I mean, we have our team that films, we put that content on the YouTube channel. Yes, yes. What I'm hearing from you is a bit of confusion because you see content, other type of content that is provided with a different purpose, right? To be more visible and right? Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, other YouTube content is made for the goal of reaching a natural audience, whereas the NATO content seems like it's just there so that if maybe someone looked for NATO, there's an official source to go to.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. That's what it is. But you know what? I'll pass this question actually to my colleagues. And if you want to follow up, I'd be very, happy to put you in touch with them. I think as I said at the beginning, we also want to learn from you because you are the ones that on the receiving end. Yeah.
I was just a little bit curious of like where it stands in the content strategy. Like if it is something that NATO wanted was people to come to the YouTube channel, or if it's just, I know it's important for on social media platforms to have a official verified presence so that when someone does look up NATO, something does come up. So at least it's there. And maybe it's not always a good idea to have a channel that is trying to, maybe that's not the goal, is to reach a natural audience. I'm just trying to place that all these natural channels or all the NATO specific official social media presences, figure out where their goal is in the overall content strategy.
Okay, it's out there. Good, thank you. Yeah, no, very, very, very good question. I have only the partial answer that it didn't, from my perspective, it serves as a main repository. It can be for content that is, B-roll or sometimes our videos. And I know that for our videos that are created, let's say, to reach, aiming to reach an audience, I know that there is also indeed a strategy to make that happen. But I'll engage a bit more with my colleagues because you also made me curious. Yeah, it's interesting to see how your take from where you stand. Yeah. Thank you.
Bianca, please.
Thank you, Paul. Alina, I was just wondering because, for example, I also follow you a lot on social media, and I think the content is great, and I think it fits at least our bubble. But I was just wondering because I also experienced the recent event in Romania and the rising of skepticism towards the EU and NATO, even among the young people. And I was just wondering if you have thought or if you plan to also do a strategy on how can we reach the other young people that might be skeptic, because they also follow social media, but I'm just wondering probably they might need a different content or different platforms. For example, I don't know, I don't have TikTok, but I think a lot of young people are using TikTok. So I was just wondering if you have thought or if you plan to do something on this side.
Yes, we are aware of that, and we are thinking that is as much as we can do. But it's really good to hear, also from you. Maybe we can, with Paul together, we can brainstorm a bit because we have limited resources. We need to prioritize as well. But I agree, young people are being skeptic is not a problem. Yeah. So we don't want everyone to be, it's important but it's important to facilitate factual information, to facilitate access to information, and to also have a communication channel. I agree. So let's take that offline, maybe with Paul, and have a bit of brainstorming. I know that there is also interest in that. We work with now, after I talked at the beginning, about how we NATO do it and the nations do it, and actually on this type of initiatives, it's important that we join forces because NATO, yes, we can do stuff, but we can do only that much. It's important to join forces with universities, with public administration, with you guys. We have now, I don't know if you saw, but my colleagues from the team that focuses on youth, they put together what they call a youth advisory board. So they invited young people to be part of a community where they exchange, where they propose, together they discuss these issues. So it's just to say that we are mindful. We look at this with interest, and you're most welcome to come up with ideas, and let's create that brainstorming together.
Of course, just to say that also I'm working for DG IMPA in the European Commission, and we also have a youth advisory board, and I must say that it's working very well. So I think it's a good initiative.
Super. Good to hear. We are a bit, younger in this respect, but it's good to know. Thank you for sharing.
Maybe this is one of the topics of the projects, of the upcoming projects for our leaders. We are looking forward to seeing your ideas. So we continue with Robert. Thank you, Bianca, for the questions once again.
Thank you, Paul. Yeah, but I think the answer to this question was already given by Alina in the previous answer, but I still ask it and put it on the table. Maybe you have something else to add. I was wondering about a strong and beneficial relationship with others. Like, what are, I don't know, maybe some key points that a press officer should follow in order to have a strong and beneficial relationship with the media, with the journalists. Besides trust, because you mentioned that a lot.
Always, a two-way communication, two-way street. Communication is always a two-way street. We don't, producing content and just pushing it out doesn't work. It needs to be, a dialogue. The circumstances change, so no day is the same. And one of the questions that I heard at some point was, okay, how do you plan for communication in case of this or in case of that? Of course, there is a bit of a anticipation, but no day is the same. And NATO has, I joined NATO 16 years ago, and the information environment was completely different. Some of you might have been, very, very young at that age. I mean, at that time. And at that time, there was a lot of, mainstream media, very little social media, and no TikTok, no nothing. There was a lot of there was more predictability in the relationship with media. There were like weekly briefings whatsoever. There is not that much anymore, but there is a lot more content and a lot more interest from media because of what happens, because of what's out there. So this, again, is just to come back to the two-way street. In the press service, we do have a duty system. So there is no time that our shop closes. So the journalists always know that if they reach out to NATO, there is always someone on the receiving end that gets their question, and we, sometimes we don't have the answer at that particular point in time because maybe it's very technical, maybe it's something that we don't have for the moment the expert on hand, but there is always an answer. Okay, stand by. When do you need it by? Then there is a lot of informal conversation when they come to events. We try to see, how can we help them? Because we have the same objective. We want to inform. They are there. Media is there to inform, and we want them to have that actual information to understand it. And when they don't have it, we want them to ask for it so that we know what they need. I work on media operations. Do you know what media operations is? No. Any idea? Well, it's anything but content. So I mentioned before that there are different. There are regular events at NATO headquarters, were organized by NATO. The defense ministers meet 3 times per year. The foreign ministers meet 3 times per year. We have a summit almost every year. For every event that happens at NATO, there is always a media component. And for media to be able to come, media operations take care of everything, like announcing them that there is an event, accrediting them to the event, making sure that the tables are there, making sure they have electricity, they have Wi-Fi, everything they need so that they can work. When they come, they just can do their work. We also organize access to, restricted events so that they have their images. We also organize the background briefings. So all these are part of us, building a relationship with media and maintaining a relationship with media that is in mutual interest. Because we work together. We cannot do without them. And they cannot, they can do their work without us, but their work would be much harder. And the information that they would get would be, much more fragmented or much more difficult to get and to put together. So that's how we work, and that's what I learned from my experience of two-way street, being mindful of what they need to do their work, being ready to help, staying flexible, and they also help. When we do our part, they also do their part, and we meet in the middle, and it's always a very good experience. They can do their job. We can do our job. Do you want to work in press or in the press department?
From at least I'm not interested in press. I think it's very difficult. I mean, I think it's hard to handle such a topic in such a domain. I mean, I work in the Ministry of Education in Romania, and I somehow helped my colleagues from the communication department, but I honestly felt like this whole communication thing, and on a smaller scale than it is at NATO, it felt a bit overwhelming, and I think you need to be very well prepared, and I don't know, maybe in love with this field if you want to have some results.
Well, it's not easy, but it's just beautiful. We are lucky at NATO that and now, yeah, of course, it's different from every country, but in some countries, media from some countries are bigger than in other countries. In Eastern Europe, the mindset of the journalist has been under construction because, of course, we don't have that democratic, the tradition of democracy is still, being built up. And one component in democracy is the free press, and press recognized as being important for informing the public opinion, for making the politics accountable. Then in Romania or in other Eastern European countries, also in the Balkan region, you have a lot of outlets that are where journalists are, all of them, they need to cover everything. Whereas in some other countries, the media institutions, they have a bit, more resources. They have the luxury of having people specialized in European Union affairs, in security affairs, in health affairs, whatever. And that helps tremendously, because if you are in a media institution where you as a employee, as a journalist, you need to be able to cover everything, obviously it's very hard for those people to understand everything and to allocate their time and energy to understand that much. So the quality of and the depth, the level of depth that they produce is different from what produces someone from a press agency who is, specialized in security and comes religiously to every NATO event. Of course, that journalist knows a lot about security. So that's why when we discuss with journalists from countries in Eastern Europe, what we tell them? We tell them to inform themselves also from well-established Western publications that we know have resources and have people that focus on security. Security is not easy to understand. So I don't know if it helps you, or if you are even less willing to consider a job in in communication.
I mean, I can't lie. I thought about communication like
Okay.
occasionally, but I still think that it's a very very hard job, and I think it somehow, I don't know. I mean I think it's a field in which you like feel somewhat of a connection to it from the beginning.
Mhm. Yeah, it doesn't mean that you don't do communication in your day-to-day life,
Yeah,
because
of course.
we all communicate. So whenever we do that, it's important to keep that in mind. And also when we talk about stuff that is in our area of expertise, yeah, we communicate.
Thank
So
you.
we all have communities, and we are all communicators. Yeah, yeah. Okay. Any other question?
Yes, we do have
Okay.
many more.
Okay.
It's okay. I think Paul, if you want to add your question.
Yeah, so this is another one that you kind of touched on just a little bit at the beginning of this section with Robert's first question. I'm wondering how you go about planning communications for anticipated events. So the example that I gave in the document was when Russia seemed like it was about to invade Ukraine in 2020. You have specific 2022, right? Sorry.
No
Oh,
worries.
yeah. So, but I'm curious, like when you see that and you maybe have some classified information that says, we know this is going to happen, do you have like pre-placed communications plans that you have ready to go? So the second that the trigger is pulled, you have messages that can go out? Or I guess it's more about the logistics of communication.
Yeah, yeah. Yes, so there is crisis and there is planned event, right? For a planned event, we follow the development of the decision. So we know that at this ministerial meeting there will be an agreement on this topic, for instance. Yeah, whatever. I don't have something coming to my mind. So what we do is with our experts, we follow that topic, and before the event we put together like a rolling script, which is okay, these are the main messages, anticipated outcomes of this meeting, this is what they mean, some potential questions. That's, yes, we do that. And we also circulate that with other nations so that we're on the same page. In crisis, it's a different conversation, but it doesn't stay less coordinated in the sense that, of course, when there is a major crisis, everyone, and it's something about NATO, everyone looks at us. So there is a very intense exchange between communicators and the holders of the subject matters expert. We put together the answers or the main messages, and those messages we also, within the limit of our time, also circulate them to nations where we can push out that message, because we have lots of questions about that. And in parallel we inform other delegations so that they also know what happened, what is our answer, and of course they can add also their national angle. In the case of Russia's invasion on Ukraine, we were, as I said, watching that. There was this deliberate decision to declassify information and to go out proactively about that in coordination with some other, major, allies that had that intelligence. And then in this kind of situation also, learn it by doing, or something like this, depending on how it evolves, we adapt. But what we do, and that's key actually for our communication, we do have a monitoring function. We also inform ourselves from media. I also coordinate our media monitoring team. Only a handful of people that actually look at media because we, unlike, so NATO is an organization, unlike national administrations, we do not have embassies or an intelligence service to tell us actually what is happening on the ground. So we gather a lot of information from media, and sometimes, in many cases, actually, media are the first to report on a crisis. The first, bit of information comes via the media. So we use that. We try to stay informed, and our monitoring unit is always the one that helps us stay ahead of the curve. So flexibility is the key word here, I would say. Yeah.
So I'm a little, I guess it sounds like you guys were kind of in that crisis mode prior to Russians crossing the border and before it became a shooting war. Like, because NATO knew they were already, the gears were turning, someone had made a judgment call and said, we got to get on this. Is that right?
So it was, yes. It was obvious that something was happening. It was a lot of disinformation around it. But what we also knew, I mean, you were very young at that stage, but in 2014, Russia invaded Ukraine, a part of Ukraine, and took a part of Ukraine, which is Crimea. And they took a part of Ukraine, that Crimea, under the pretext were deploying forces for a pretense exercise. So we also learned from the past. We're allies that watched that, learn from the past. And they wanted, I mean, they decided to change the approach. That was also something that, for sure, I guess, it was not unseen, but I'll not comment on that. But in this case, it was seen. It was denied by Russia that actually was anything else but a very innocent exercise. And the decision was to go out deliberately to alert the public opinion about that.
Thank you. I was really curious about the actual process. Oh, sorry,
Yeah.
I didn't realize
No,
weren't done.
what I like also to say is that the Secretary General, he's the NATO Secretary General, who is now Mark Rutte. Before we had Jens Stoltenberg, that you might know. Yeah. The Secretary General is a very important figure here. He is the one that holds together what is the chairman of the North Atlantic Council. And he is the one that sits in the chair and moderates the discussions. And also he's the one that communicates the decisions once they are made. So after every meeting, with very few exceptions, of the defense ministers or foreign ministers or even more heads of states and government, the Secretary General, as a rule, he has a press conference. So that's part of the plan, always. There might be, an event, a summit that has two meetings, one after the other on different issues. He might have a press conference only after the second meeting so that he doesn't flood, the media with too many press conferences, because that's a lot. But every such event, the Secretary General goes out and he communicates. He has a press conference, and there is a preparation of what he is going to say until the last moment, because obviously the decisions are made in the room that he gets out of and goes and briefs the press. Yeah. So that's what is part of the standard. Whenever he meets a head of state or government, with very, very few exceptions that sometimes can be time limitations were similar, they go out and they talk to the press because it's important. They decided to meet, they had a good discussion. I mean, it must have been something important that brought them together, right? So he goes there with the other head of state and they brief the press. So that's standard. That's always planned by default. Yeah. I hope it answers, but also doesn't frighten. Yeah.
Thank you, Paul. I hope you are clarified now. Thank you, Alina. So let's continue with Claire. She also has a great question. Please, Claire.
You're very kind. I just wanted to say again, thank you so much, Alina, for your time and for your insight. I think everyone in the room is just really able to learn a lot from your perspective. My question was, how is NATO working to strengthen the resilience of civilian institutions along with military force to ensure a whole of society approach to national security? Thank you.
Well, that's a two-way street, because NATO is the alliance, but obviously every member country is a member of that alliance. So it's something that happens, first of all, at home. Yeah. And that's also replicated at NATO. I touched upon just earlier about why we call it political military alliance. Yeah. It's been a long day, so if I'm not saying the whole word, I'm sorry. So as a matter of principle, the decisions are made, the big decisions, far-reaching decisions are made at the political level, because the political level is the one that has the mandate to do to make those decisions. So if a country wants to spend more time on defense, more money on defense, and invest in something, the political establishment is the one that drives the force, and then of course needs to make the budget available, to check the availability of the budget, also to task the military to get from the military an assessment. Okay, what do we need to reinforce this? What do we need to reinforce that? But NATO also plays a role, because NATO makes the 32 allies work as one. And they do that through a couple of tools or principles. One is the interoperability. And the other one, in order to work together, we need to have the same standards. And then another one is in order to be able to achieve an objective, we need to have these capabilities. So the third one is called defense planning. So interoperability, defense planning, and what else did I say? Standardization. Yeah, this is the role of NATO. Every year, NATO at the NATO headquarters, there is a deliberate effort of planning actually the defense capabilities. It's very complicated. It's a lot of assessment, what is available, what are our objectives, what is the context, and what do we need as an alliance. And then based on the region and everything, what are the standards that are that allies need to comply with. So this planning that is centralized then goes to the nations. But this planning is also based on what comes from the nations as well, because member states are also the ones, setting the level of ambition. So it's we have a whole division in NATO that does defense planning, defense policy planning. And then every major decision is agreed at the political level. And then the military part is the one tasked to make it happen. At the same time, the military is the one that raises the alarm, goes to the political level and says, actually, there is a risk here. So what do we do? Just to be very simple.
Yeah, maybe I could ask just a quick follow-up. So when the alarm gets raised and the military then decides to act, like, are there ways that then they help support civilian institutions within their own countries to be able to potentially combat various types of threats that one might experience?
Well, yeah, of course. One example is the pandemic. The pandemic was an unprecedented, there was a global pandemic in the early 20th century, but during the pandemic, the military actually helped tremendously in many countries the civilian establishment, because they were more equipped for dealing with the crisis, deploying assets where there was a stringent need for assets, like portable hospitals, enforcing whatever rules were to be enforced, but especially for the for the emergency deliveries, and there were military planes that transported all sorts of medical equipment. Yeah,
That's great.
so there is a lot of connection between the two. There are different mandates, but they can make it work only together. And at the national level, there is one way of working. At NATO, there is a complementary way, and they help each other basically on security issues. Yeah. Okay. Thank you for the question.
Thank you.
Thank you for the answer, Claire. I hope you are clarified now. And we move to the next topic, which is regarded to disinformation. And I invite Ekaterina with her question.
All right, so I'm wondering, how does NATO work with technology platforms or influencers to counter disinformation or promote its message? And when I wrote this question, I was never actually considering that you really work with influencers, but you've already kind of touched upon that. So if you could, go into a bit more details.
Yeah, yes. So I touched upon that quite extensively, but the bottom line is we try to be present on different platforms. If we are not present on one, it's a matter of time, but also we cannot be everywhere, right? We also need to prioritize. And yeah, I'm also curious to know from you. I heard about TikTok because many people seem to be on TikTok. Do you think it would be useful? I mean, given what is there, would that be?
I personally
What
don't
is your
have
opinion?
an account on TikTok, as my other colleague
Mhm,
stated as well, but
mhm,
it does look like it has a big reach, so
mhm,
it could
mhm.
work, especially for younger
Yeah.
generations.
Yeah. Okay. Well, it's interesting. It's interesting. I know that there was there is a reflection. We have limited resources, but still we want to be there for the people who need access to direct information. Countering disinformation in terms of principle, we don't do countering disinformation to as a let's say as an activity, but what we do is we just facilitate access to information. You see what I mean? We don't want to. We are not in the game of influencing or countering or
So you're not directly stopping the disinformation, but rather promote truthful and ethic information.
exactly. So this is what we prioritize, but it's also because we learned the lesson. So after the invasion of Crimea, and also a bit after the start of the war, we did a lot more countering. I mean, rebuttals. Yeah, rebuttals means when we saw something that was not correct, was misleading, we would reach out to those media and we would ask to correct. But we also realized that it was a horrendous amount of effort that we needed to put together. And at the same time, for Russian media, it was also a way to aim to drain our resources. So there was a lot of misinformation coming from that direction, and disinformation and fake news. We tried, we took a stance, but at some point we decided actually it's not worth. From that moment on, we decided that Russian media is not it's not worth the effort to do rebuttals. However, when we see something that is misleading or not complete in the mainstream media, we still do that effort, yeah, because it might be because people they didn't have access to information, they misunderstood. It might be a genuine mistake, or they might not have thought about the particular angle. So we still do that, but selectively, like going out there and trying to correct. As a matter of principle, at this point in time, we do not consider Russian media Kremlin-sponsored media as bona fide media. We consider them as propaganda, and we treat them as such. They do not have access to NATO events because we saw that basically they are not reporting factually from our events.
I wanna ask, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but it just came to my mind that did your team use this rebuttaling endeavors into the, let's say, political climate that was going on in Romania, especially during the election time, and the whole anti-EU propaganda and anti-NATO propaganda?
Well, we do not have the resources to intervene, and we don't have the mandate to intervene. So in a NATO country, the responsibility of communicating about, what does the NATO membership entail, why is it important for Romania to be a NATO country, what does it mean? It stays first of all with the national authorities. Yeah, so that's the principle. Yeah, because again, it's not, NATO is not it's not an entity that comes beyond the nations. We are all NATO. Yeah, NATO members are NATO. But going back to your question, I want to mention something that you might find interesting. We do not have Russian media like Russia Today or Interfax or TASS. We don't have a NATO events. We don't consider them as bona fide media. However, we engage with Russian media in exile, and we try to help them to facilitate access to direct access to information, and even we sponsor activities where they can come and see with their own eyes, what NATO is, how NATO works. We also organize briefings, for them. We keep the door open, but we are selective who enters on that door, because again, it's a two-way communication. Trust is important, and also adhering to principles of informing the public opinion factually.
Alina, thank you for such detailed perspective. Indeed, many things to be learned from this webinar. We continue with the next topic, which is a gender perspective, and Ekaterina also prepared this question. So please, Ekaterina.
I wanted to ask if you noticed any differences in how female spokespersons or leaders are perceived in press interactions compared to their male counterparts.
Interesting perspective from you. Interesting question from you. No, I haven't perceived any difference. We had one as a spokesperson for 13 years. When I joined NATO, we had James Apaturai as spokesperson. Great professionals, all of them. And this is actually what matters to media. They do not look at who, gender, who has which gender, but they look at that spokesperson as an interlocutor that is open, that they can access, that they can have, that they can hear from, that they can discuss with, and that also counts for other interlocutors that media are looking for. In at least from my experience, we have great professionals that I'm always in awe when they speak to media, because there is so much expertise there, and that's what makes the difference.
Thank you, Alina. And the last topic and the last question, it concerns advice, a personalized advice, and I invite also Katrina. It was her question.
I'm happy to conclude this very long but very insightful question sessions we had with you, and I wanted to know, well, what advice would you give to young people interested in a career in international communications or diplomacy, particularly in security organizations such as NATO?
Well, first of all, I would warmly encourage you to seek, such a career, because in this interconnected world, which despite now the recent trends of fragmentation, it will stay highly interconnected. It's so important. It's so important to have, you know, that interest, and also to want to be part of it and to want to contribute. As I said, security is so important, and understanding of security is even more important, I would say, at a larger scale. So this is where my second advice would be: to do not shy away from looking, how can I put it, from looking at the potential consequences of anything. Security now has a much wider compass, let's say. It's not only hard security, but it's also cyber. It's also, in a way, maybe, you know, climate. It's such a large concept. So trying to not lose sight of details, but also understand, you know, implications that go beyond what you see. They are so important. And then thirdly, I mentioned understanding of security. It's important that everyone understands what it means. And here I'm very passionate about education, and I'm very passionate about media literacy. And I'm saying that for a reason, because we all see a risk of people's minds becoming vulnerable, more and more vulnerable to enemies that are hard to be seen. And resilience, I mean, mental resilience and understanding and knowing what it is, making that effort to think critically requires education. And that education sometimes is not, what I'm trying to say is that every one of you can contribute to that. You are very privileged because you get also to hear from each other. You get to hear from so many, experienced people. So do not stop here, and also pay it forward. Yeah, spread it. You can make a difference. Each of you can make a difference.
Okay, so any further questions? Even though we had so many questions, Alina, thank you for taking the time and the patience to thoroughly respond to each question.
Thank you, my pleasure.
Yeah, so I think we can conclude now. Once again, thank you for your time. Thank you for putting your heart in all the answers and your knowledge, your complete knowledge in all the answers you provided. I think it's a very good, great webinar. I also thank our fellows. They deserve the credit for all the questions that were addressed today. And looking forward to the next one. And good luck in your career perspective. And of course, the project is open. The challenge is open. We can find ideas for spreading good NATO information to young people. Thank you and goodbye.
Thank you so much, everyone. Pleasure to have met you.
Alina. Thank you.
And let's make it a start, not a finish. If you have ideas, my contact, I think it's available via Paul, or Paul can also gather additional questions, or if you want to have a project, by all means, happy to put you in touch with people if you wish so. Good luck with everything. Thank you for your time, and best wishes to all.
Thank you, Alina. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
You too. Bye-bye.